End of the 20th century. Following the results of the First Lebanese War, the Israeli army created a buffer zone in southern Lebanon, planning to use it to prevent shelling of Israeli border cities by Lebanese and Palestinian armed forces. It should be mentioned that at the very beginning of the First Lebanese War, the United Nations Security Council adopted Resolution No. 425, which demanded that the Israeli army leave Lebanese territory. Only in May 2000 did Israel decide to implement this UN resolution, after which the Israeli army was withdrawn from Lebanese territory. At the same time, a significant part of Israeli society was against the withdrawal of troops from Lebanon, as they believed that this would negatively affect the security of border cities. At the same time, the Lebanese Hezbollah demanded that Israeli troops leave an area at the junction of the borders of Israel, Lebanon and the Syrians, which was called Shebaa Farms. The fact is that on UN maps this area was marked as part of Syrian territory, and was captured by the Israeli army during the Six-Day War of 1967. The Israeli government refused to comply with these demands, reasonably noting that Lebanon did not participate in the Six-Day War. It is worth mentioning that the UN confirmed that Israel fully complied with Resolution No. 425, since it did not require the withdrawal of troops from Syrian territory, and therefore the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Shebaa Farms was not required to comply with the resolution. It would seem that the conflict was over, but Syria, which had long ago lost control of the farms, agreed that they were Lebanese territory, which prompted Hezbollah to begin a fight for control over them. In September 2004, the United Nations Security Council adopted Resolution 1559, which demanded the withdrawal of all foreign armed forces from Lebanese territory, as well as the disarmament of all illegal armed groups in Lebanese territory. In 2005, Syria withdrew all its armed forces from Lebanese territory, and the Lebanese government stated that it does not plan to disarm Hezbollah units as they serve the interests of the country. Thus, by the end of 2005, the entire south of Lebanon came under the control of the Hezbollah organization, whose leader, speaking in Beirut on May 23, 2006, stated that the entire north of Israel, including ports, military bases and industrial enterprises, was in the zone of destruction of its armed units, at the disposal of which there are more than 12,000 missiles. Tensions on the Israeli-Lebanese border grew rapidly. On July 12, 2006, at 9 a.m., Hezbollah troops launched a rocket and mortar attack on the village of Shlomi and the fortified village of Narit. Also on this day, a Hezbollah detachment crossed the border and attacked an Israeli patrol that was traveling in 2 Humvees. As a result of the attack, 8 Israeli soldiers were killed and 3 were wounded. 2 wounded Israeli soldiers were captured and taken to Lebanese territory. Immediately after the events described, the leadership of Hezbollah approached the Israeli government with a proposal to return the captured soldiers if Israel released Palestinian and Lebanese prisoners from prisons. Already at 11 o'clock in the morning the Israeli army began active operations. Israeli troops entered the Lebanese border area in order to return captured soldiers, and Israeli military helicopters attacked the sites from which the Lebanese border areas were being shelled. Israeli fighter bombers were also scrambled and attacked ammunition delivery routes. On the same day, the Israeli Prime Minister ordered the launch of a large-scale military operation in young Lebanon and refused negotiations with the Hezbollah organization. On July 13, the Lebanese authorities stated that they had nothing to do with the actions of Hezbollah and called on Israel for a truce. Nevertheless, the Israeli army continued its offensive in southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah units continued shelling the Israeli border area. The scale of hostilities began to grow, and by the evening of July 13, the Israeli Air Force and Navy blocked Lebanese airspace and ports. Israeli aircraft also carried out a massive attack on Beirut airport, as a result of which 3 runways were disabled. On July 14, Israeli aircraft continued to bomb southern Lebanon, and the leader of Hezbollah declared open war on Israel. On July 15, Israeli aircraft continued to carry out strikes on Lebanese territory, and not only the southern, but also the central regions of the country were bombed. Hezbollah units responded to the actions of the Israeli army with massive rocket attacks on Israeli cities. Also on July 15, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said that the Israeli army is ready to stop hostilities if Hezbollah releases the captured soldiers and stops shelling Israeli territory. The Israeli government also demanded the implementation of a United Nations Security Council, which required the disarmament of irregular armed forces in Lebanon and the transfer of control over all Lebanese territory to the Lebanese government. On July 16, mutual shelling and bombing continued. Also, Hezbollah units managed to hit the Israeli corvette Hanit using the S-802 anti-ship cruise missile. To avoid a large-scale war in the region, on July 17, the United Nations Security Council introducing peacekeeping forces into Lebanese territory, but the parties to the conflict continued to conduct hostilities. The Israeli army continued to launch air strikes, which led to the fact that Beirut was effectively cut off from the rest of Lebanon as a result of the destruction of the main highways. Nevertheless, Hezbollah troops continued to launch rocket attacks on Israeli territory, attacking cities such as Haifa, Acre and Safed. On July 18, a representative of the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs met with a delegation from UN Secretary-General Kofi Annan, after which the Israeli government announced that, under certain circumstances, it was ready to support the deployment of peacekeepers to southern Lebanon. Nevertheless, mutual shelling continued, and the evacuation of foreign citizens began from Lebanese territory. On July 19, Hezbollah units increased the intensity of rocket attacks on Israeli territory. Also on this day, the Israeli army began moving deeper into Lebanese territory, planning to destroy the fortifications of Hezbollah and allow its troops to attack Israeli territory. By this time, more than 10,000 Israeli soldiers were involved in the fighting, who were opposed by 2.5 to 7,000 Hezbollah soldiers. Immediately after the launch of the offensive in southern Lebanon, the Israeli army encountered fierce resistance from Hezbollah units, which caused the pace of the offensive to be significantly lower than planned. Already on July 21, realizing that the forces involved were insufficient for a rapid offensive in southern Lebanon, the Israeli army called up reservists for military service, who were sent to the Gaza Strip area in order to free up regular units for redeployment to southern Lebanon. By July 22, the Israeli army receives reinforcements, after which it launches a large-scale offensive to create a buffer zone in southern Lebanon. By the evening of July 22, the Israeli army, with the support of tanks, managed to establish control over the village of Maroun al-Ras. Hezbollah units put up fierce resistance, but the Israeli army moved forward, thanks to which on July 24, the Golani Infantry Brigade, supported by armored units, reached the outskirts of the city of Bint Jubail and began its assault. Very soon a bloody battle began on the streets of the city, but the Israeli army, despite its overwhelming technical superiority over the enemy, was unable to quickly establish control over the populated area. Despite air support and technical superiority over the enemy, the Israeli offensive was slow, and Hezbollah troops continued to shell Israeli territory. In this situation, on August 1, the Israeli government announced the expansion of the ground operation in Lebanon, which involves the deployment of additional forces. Doubling the number of troops taking part in the fighting, the Israeli army launched an offensive along the entire border with Lebanon. Very soon, fierce fighting broke out in the vicinity of the settlements of Edessa, Kfar Kala and Ida al-Shab. By the end of the day, in some sectors of the front, the Israeli army managed to penetrate into Lebanese territory at a distance of up to 6 kilometers. Despite all the UN's attempts to find a peaceful resolution to the conflict, the intensity of hostilities grew along with the number of forces involved in combat operations. Despite the deployment of additional forces, the Israeli army was unable to break the defenses of Hezbollah units in the city of Bint Jubail. On August 11, during urban battles, Hezbollah units managed to destroy from 5 to 15 Merkava tanks, which before the start of the Second Lebanon War were positioned by the manufacturer as invulnerable to handheld anti-tank weapons. According to statements by the Israeli government, Hezbollah units used Russian RPG-29 grenade launchers to fight tanks, which were not officially supplied to Lebanon. On the same day, the Israeli army, having brought in additional forces and increased the size of its group to 30,000 soldiers, launched a large-scale offensive operation, planning to establish control over the territory of southern Lebanon, reaching the banks of the Litani River. Despite the fact that by the evening of August 11, the United Nations Security Council adopted Resolution No. 1701, which demanded a ceasefire in Lebanon, by the morning of August 14, the intensity of hostilities only increased. Thanks to a helicopter landing, the Israeli army still manages to establish control over the city of Bint Jubail. Continuing the offensive, the Israeli army managed to oust Hezbollah units from the cities of Marjuyan and Attair. Nevertheless, the Israeli army was unable to completely break the enemy's resistance and reach the banks of the Litani River along its entire length. On August 12, the Israeli government supported the UN resolution, but with the caveat that Israeli troops would remain on Lebanese territory until they were replaced by the Lebanese army. By August 13, the Lebanese Cabinet of Ministers, together with representatives of Hezbollah, supported the UN resolution. By the evening of the same day, in some sectors of the front, the Israeli army managed to reach the banks of the Litani River, but it was not possible to create a full-fledged buffer zone. The fact is that at this time fierce fighting continued in the city of Ida al-Shab, which was located only 700 meters from the Israeli border. On the morning of August 14, a ceasefire agreement came into force, thanks to which the shelling of Israeli territory and the bombing of Lebanese territory ceased. Nevertheless, already on August 16, Hezbollah announced that it had no plans to disarm and withdraw its troops beyond the Litani River. Despite this, active hostilities ceased, and on August 19, the Lebanese army began to take positions in southern Lebanon, and the Israeli army began to withdraw its forces from Lebanese territory. This ended the Second Lebanese War. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel and click on the bell so you don't miss new videos.